Well, one of the most important conclusions is that the gender digital divide is a process, is not just a picture. So we try to gather and reflect in a holistic way all the issues and problems of women in cybersecurity. And the interest of women in technology. So the idea was to start from childhood to how the workplace is reflecting that. We have been paying a lot of attention to adolescence, but we need to pay much more attention to the primary education. That is where the future interests really develop. So it has been a learning process, a very interesting learning process, because this kind of topic has always interested me a lot. So it has involved a learning process, as I was saying, to look at all those processes. Sara, what is it that made you write this book? Why did you think it was necessary? Well, the main reason was from the Secretary of State for Technological Progress. After reading the results of a survey on women and video games, so they wanted to create a book to describe the situation, which has to do with other factors as well and several other initiatives, but it is a request coming from the Secretary of State for Digitalization and the Ministry of Economics. So what are the lessons learned for you while preparing this book? Well, when you go deep in a subject, you learn a lot. There are a lot of nuances. It's a very peculiar world in which we've seen some specificities that we needed to go into, and it is also a world in which we are in. It's part of our everyday life, and more. But the key is being able to see the specificities of a predominantly male world. So it is necessary to update constantly this sector, because the pace is tremendous. So we need to be updated with all the research and the studies, the surveys, etc. So we need to support women in the technological sector. There are many changes that are taking place. This is one of the most interesting things of this sector, the dynamism and the changes. Yes, many changes. Yes, that's one of the main features of this sector. Indeed, yes. That has an influence also on the perspective and how the role of women is evolving. Right? Well, it has many things in common with the rest of male sectors, or predominantly male sectors. But looking at this, we are also able to look at success cases. We know the problems and the difficulties, but we have to go deep in the success stories. And on the things that can boost the presence of women in the technological sector. Yeah, we have to work before women go to high school, for instance. We have to work on the primary school, the transmission of stereotypes, for instance. Stereotypes are learned from the childhood, and this happens not only at school, also on the family environment. Everything that surrounds us is giving us pieces of input in our process of socialization. When I talk about the situation of inequality of women, especially in the technological sector, the biases and in gender is not done consciously. It's not that men are evil. But this is part of our society. We have learned some roles and we repeat those roles. So it's important to stop and think. And many of the things that we take for granted and we see as natural, maybe they are not, because sometimes this leads to limitations. And this is maybe one of the great sad situations, not only in this sector, but everywhere. Not only professionally, all in the social media administration, more and more, everything is going to be digital. So we need to think about some of these questions. When we talk about equality, well, and maybe it's something that I like to talk about. It's goodwill is not enough to implement changes. We need support, and we need to assume risks. We need to try things that may or may not succeed and may not work. And so women essentialism is one of the great enemies of male and women inequality. So we should not foster or promote activities by women and for women. This may look as a success short term, but long term it needs to be more cross-sectional, and we need to talk more about capacities of people in general, gender independent, so that neither your abilities nor your capacities are limited. Because when you are told that something is not for you, if you're a woman, that has an influence on your perception and your idea of yourself. The data of the Eurobarometer talk about this as well. In terms of digital skills, they're useful at work, but also for your social development. So one of the processes that we should tackle is digital socialization. The previous talker was saying that the current generations have been born with their screens on their hands. So we have to integrate the gender perspective on their learnings. Technology is considered something neutral and unbiased, but this is totally wrong. The same factors come into play as in everyday life. Maybe I have elaborated a little bit much, too much. No, not at all. Yes, it was very interesting. I think you agree with Esther. You were telling us that it is important to change the image that we have in our own sector. How can we change the image, the stereotypes that exist in this sector itself. How can we work this cultural change? Well, cultural changes are slow and difficult, not easy at all. But we are leaning towards that. I think it is key, and it's not nothing original, but I think it's key is how knowledge is transferred, both on the side of the teacher and also on the textbooks. Why is the world of in technology? Why is the world of technology less appealing for women? Because they don't have reference. There are not many women famous for being researchers. There are many studies as well about how women tend to underestimate themselves, and boys, on the other hand, tend to overestimate themselves. But we're having technical problems with Sara's connection. Sorry, you were not able to listen to you. Now you're back. Yes. Sorry about that. I was saying that there is a great influence in the educational sector at the primary school because there are no women on textbooks. Especially in science books and technology books, there are practically no women. The most recent studies have shown that only 6% of women were mentioned in science books. So that leads to women and girls, young girls, not being able to relate, and boys, on the other hand, are really taking that in, and they feel that it is their world, and all those elements are going to be repeated and reproduced at the workplace, because women tell us that there are hostile environments, that sometimes they feel like intruders in these environments, and it doesn't only happen in the technological sector, but it especially happens here in the technological sector, which is very associated with a male image. And about the skills acquisition, I would like to mention a study which was very important. I had a lot of media coverage. It had to do about how women at 6, they felt they were less brilliant than their male colleagues, and being brilliant is often associated with science and technology. So it seems that only the most brilliant, most intelligent are able to have a career on this. But up to 6 years, there were no differences. But then, from 6 years on, difference were felt and described in the study. So they consider themselves less brilliant than than boys. To me, that was a very relevant and very telling piece of information when we talk about bias, gender bias. You're talking about stereotypes and bias. There has always been a bias, yes, in all sectors, especially in the computer science world. There's more. And why is it so? Well, I think in the computer science, and also in video games, which is also a paradigm. This process is linked with the informal part, all the leisure and hobbies, interest environments, the places where you get an education as well outside the class. Is well here. It's also a very male atmosphere. If from a young age you get farther and farther from this environment and this atmosphere, in the end you see men only. And this works both ways for male and women. It's a social issue. But there are many stereotypes, people computer science geeks and weirdos, people working in basements, and there's also another factor that was studied: the decoration in a class. In classrooms that were decorated with computer science related things and related to stereotypes and so basements and cyber geeks, etc., had an influence on the perception on girls in their relationship with computer science. And if that compared to other classroom where there was no decoration about computer science related things, the results were different. So when we talk about social processes, we cannot talk about one single factor because they are all related, and we need to separate analytically. But everything is linked. Yeah, it's a very complex process, but I believe it is an effort that we have to make, not only because of social justice, but because we need to make the most of our resources. So about this, the most important message is that we cannot limit ourselves, neither ourselves nor them, the men. We cannot be restricted by these stereotypes. The key message is that stereotypes is limiting our capacities and our aspirations. So there shouldn't be any girl that says, well, I love computer science, but it is so complex and it's only there are only boys and I don't see myself there. So that's why I was mentioning earlier about not organizing events for women and by women, even if this is if this has results short term, but in the long term it has an influence long term. That keeps on linking women to emotional aspects and men to bravery and to being direct, etc. So that, for me, that's the main factor. Not talking about male and female, but talking about what is right and wrong in terms of leadership or on programming capacities. What a complex process, but very interesting. The decoration of a classroom, so many things to take into account. One of the subjects that you also mention in your book is algorithms, that is making us change ourselves, our way of thinking, more than we think. Yes, Yes, as I was saying, in this area, in this era, where we are in a fourth digital revolution or industrial revolution, algorithms are a key and determinant. We have also touched on the technological. It seems that technology is unbiased, but it is not. But we are working a lot on that. We're working on artificial intelligence. Is also being worked on with a directive from the European Union, because we need to tackle those from a double perspective, because in the design of algorithms and the data management, that bias is being entered already, it's being introduced already, and also because artificial intelligence learns from the environment. So if there is bias or racism or male chauvinism, the algorithm is going to learn that and is going to reproduce that. So there are those two variables that we need to take into account. And then there's big data and these new forms of digital learning are becoming the main cultural transmission, the main means of cultural transfer, and it affects the way we perceive the world. If those biases are reproduced, they will stay. If you type in CEO in a browser and you only see guys with a suit and a tie, you are interiorizing that only CEOs, that only men are CEOs. So that leads to a better remuneration for men than women, or in the design. I cannot think of the name right now. This application, when you communicate with them, they do not recognize certain messages. For instance, there were studies that said that this application did not recognize messages like "I have been raped" or "I'm being mistreated." So this big mass of knowledge that is being generated through the digital world, we needs to be looked into in order to revert the bias, because the complex this type of processes are very complex. It's not easy. We have to go deeper and make an extra effort, but I think it is worth the effort. Yeah, there are many interconnected elements, and it seems like a complicated solution. What are the steps that you think can be taken to revert the situation? What can we do individually to help and revert the situation? Yeah, from an individual point of view, if I may, we have to try to make an effort not to transmit biases in our daily life. Not to say that women are good for something and men are good at other things. This seems harmless, but it has consequences. When we talk about these things, it seems that we're evil, doing bad things on purpose, but this is totally unconscious. So we should reflect and think about it, and not try not to foster this kind of behavior. And in terms of the social environment and in the public sector, to tackle the gender digital gap as a process, to consider the gender digital gap as a process, not as a fixed image, to create initiatives in schools, programs, work hard on primary education, the tech camps, working on women that can be seen as a reference for young girls. So not to focus on the university period where things are fixed already, but starting at the beginning and working with families as well, with parents' associations, giving them tools, because you may not have the right tools. You may be reproducing behaviors and biases unconsciously. So working on proposals of associations of professional women to accompany the process from an early age to university. So, were you going to say anything else? No? No? That's it. So what would be your message to these girls interested or now becoming interested now after listening to you in technology? I want to say to them, go ahead. This is a wonderful sector. The more women, the more changes. Don't be shy. Believe in yourselves. Believe in your possibilities, and don't be discouraged by those messages coming from the environment, trying to discourage them. Each person should be able to aspire to whatever they have a passion for, and to develop their capabilities, and not to be limited and restricted, and don't let yourself be influenced by your environment. And good luck. This is a changing process. The trend is positive, and this is the beginning of a great and successful path. Indeed, yes, there is still a lot of path to go through. But which are your next challenges? What are your next challenges in your future, in your professional future? What a question! I've been in consulting for a very long time. I've been lucky enough to be working with the Ministry of the President, and now I'm working Parliament, Spanish Parliament, and I'm super excited. And I hope to be able to keep on digging deeper on these subjects. So I hope to be able to devote time to research as well, which I have not been able to do so much research lately. So yeah, eager and willing to do things. This is totally vocational for me. Apart from training and experience, this is what I do is totally vocational and open to new opportunities as well. So lots of luck from here, Sara. Thanks very much. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for having me, and let's hope that we can be face to face next time. Yes, please, please. Yes, I would love that. Yeah, I would have loved to be there. Thanks very much. Thanks to you.